Joining me is Daisy Cousens, who runs her own video channel and is also a contributor to the Spectator Australia. Daisy, who has been scaring the children like this, but more particularly, why?
Well, the children are being terrified by adults who should know better, Andrew, and they are doing it because it is very, very convenient for them to have children at the forefront of their movement for two reasons. One, it sort of guarantees them some foot soldiers for the future, and two, because it's incredibly hard to criticise them. If you try to criticise these children and teenagers on the merit of their ideas, you'll get told that you are attacking them and are somehow immoral. As you know, Andrew, with your very brave and accurate critique of Greta Thunberg, the reaction to that was completely disproportionate, and a lot of it was, oh, how dare you attack a child, even though you weren't actually doing that. You were critiquing her ideas, but for this group of people, there is no distinction between the two. Now, the adults who are doing this terrifying of children are global elites like Emmanuel Macron, or extremist left-wing politicians like Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, various celebrities, and of course the mainstream media, and they have deliberately escalated their rhetoric over the past year or so in order to make this seem completely catastrophic. And I'll give you one example, Andrew. In May this year, The Guardian, the publication, updated its style guide for when it talks about climate change. And it has decreed that now at The Guardian, it will no longer be referred to as climate change, but a climate emergency, a climate crisis, or climate breakdown. The term climate change skeptic will be destroyed simply for the term denier. It's a blanket sort of climate change denier, and global warming will be replaced by global heating. So all very, very pointed to point to sort of a terrible catastrophe going to happen, creates more of a reaction. Now, if you're an adult hearing this with a fully functioning adult brain and a lot of perspective and healthy cynicism, you'll be able to wade through that kind of rhetoric and think, well, look, maybe these people have an agenda. I can probably logisticize this somehow. But if you're a child, you don't have that perspective or that healthy adult cynicism, or even a fully functioning brain yet. If you tell a child that the world is going to end in 12 years, if you show a child that obscene video that was shown in Copenhagen, they're going to take it very literally, and they are genuinely going to think that they are going to die. And projecting that onto children is evil. It is evil.
I think it so is. And by the way, you mentioned the Guardian style book. The ABC, which claims to be, neutral, claims to be impartial, unbiased. I was listening to ABC 774 presenter John Fain this morning using exactly those terms. Denier, making it equal, the equivalent of the Holocaust denial, which I think for a Jewish ABC presenter is disgraceful. Using the bodies of 6 million Jews killed in the Holocaust to make a point about, win an argument about global warming is disgraceful. And also he called it, what's it, a climate emergency? What emergency? It's just ridiculous. But look, this is not just a cheap question. I'm genuinely asking if this is a form of child abuse. You look at Greta Thunberg, for instance. She's had a range of anxiety disorders, like selective mutism, eating disorders. These are all described by herself. She's got Asperger's, which, can make you anxious if you're knocked off your train tracks. And she suffered from depression. She's being fed this stuff. I mean, this is, to me, child abuse. Do you agree?
Oh, I completely agree with you, Andrew. Certainly in the case of Greta Thunberg, that girl has had an absolute nightmare of a time with her mental and neurological health. The last thing she needs is to be the centre of this climate change movement. But it's also child abuse, Andrew, because I read today the Daily Telegraph in the UK reported that there are being reports of a sharp increase in children describing what the experts are calling eco-anxiety. And there's a group of psychologists, working with the University of Bath, and they are getting a lot of reports from teachers and from therapists and from parents who have these children with this eco-anxiety and don't know what to do about it. And the symptoms mirror that of clinical anxiety. However, the cause, of course, is this anxiety over the climate and over climate change. And in fact, the Climate Psychological Alliance, which is a body that is trying to recognise this eco-anxiety as an official condition, has said that some of these children are in such a bad way that they are being prescribed with psychiatric drugs in order to help with this problem. And it's because their parents and their teachers and public adult figures are terrifying them with this rhetoric and robbing them of a childhood. And I think that's atrocious. You breed this attitude with these kids. Well, why would I bother studying for my exams? Why would I bother trying in school? Why would I bother going to university if I'm not going to have any kind of future to go into? No kid deserves that. Where is the duty of care here?
Yeah, well, I think, how about feeding the drugs to, you know, the alarmists like Flannery instead, getting them to calm down, and maybe the children can be OK. But just against what we've just been talking about, on the other hand, why did so many children on the climate strike seem so happy when they're actually carrying signs saying they'd be killed by global warming, and they've got big smiles on their faces? Explain that.
Yes, it's a particularly jarring image, isn't it? You see those children with these happy smiles on their faces, with these banners saying, you know, you'll die of old age, we'll die of climate change. It's sort of sinister. I mean, look, perhaps they were just posing for the camera, perhaps they're being cautiously optimistic. But the thing is, Andrew, what we must remember here is that a large chunk of these kids would most definitely be there so they could get a day off school. I confess that as a kid, I was not fond of school, and if I had any kind of excuse that was legitimate to not be at school, I would have taken it for whatever reason. And this is why the idea of striking from school actually doesn't work as a rhetorical device, because school is compulsory, and, you know, a lot of kids don't enjoy it, so getting a day off for them isn't any kind of personal sacrifice in their minds. It's a good thing. You're not disrupting any of their sort of routine or making them sacrifice anything. They'll be like, oh, whoopee, I get to sit in the park with a sign. What fun. So if you really want to know the number of school kids who are genuine about this and genuinely concerned about climate change, hold it on a Saturday morning at 9 a.m. And then you'll see what disrupts what they consider important, disrupt their Saturday sports, disrupt their social lives, disrupt their sleep in, etc., etc. Then you'll see how many are genuine. Let's say how many people turn up if the event is held then.
Now you're asking them to actually make a sacrifice instead of having a day off. That's a bit unfair. Yeah. Daisy, American pop superstar Taylor Swift, she was booked to sing at the Melbourne Cup in November, but then came a social media campaign to make her say "nup to the cup" because 6 horses had died there in the last 6 Melbourne Cups. Now, even though fewer than 7,000 people have signed a change.org petition telling her to stay away, Taylor Swift's still cancelled. Now, she's blaming a diary clash with the promotional tour that she claims to have in Asia. Do you believe that, or did she just buckle to fewer than 7,000 Australians?
Oh, look, Andrew, I'm leaning to the side of actually giving Taylor Swift the benefit of the doubt here. And simply because, say, a few years ago, if a celebrity had felt incensed by this kind of petition, they would have had to kind of go quietly into the night and feign some sort of scheduling clash. But we are living in the age of celebrity activism. And while Taylor Swift is nowhere near as noisy as the likes of Alyssa Milano, she's certainly not above activism, as we saw with her song for Pride Month and that whole campaign she drove. So it would be sort of no skin off her nose, really, to think, hey, I can make a PR thing about this, how I stand up for horses and I'm an animal advocate and that I won't tolerate any of this. She could have put it all over Twitter. There could have been branded merchandise. There could have been, or, you know, she could have made it a great big thing. So I'm inclined to think that actually there maybe was a scheduling clash and a change to her Asian tour. And one of the reasons I say that, Andrew, is because I am really, really hopeful that a global juggernaut like Taylor Swift does not have a PR team that is so stupid as to be moved by a little petition with 7,000 signatures of random Australians. So I'm really hoping that's the case.
Yeah, but then on the other hand, you're saying this global superstar has a management team that is so stupid it didn't check the diary before booking in the Melbourne Cup. I mean, really, you go one way or the other on that one.
Good point.
Daisy Cousens.
Very true, Andrew.
What a pleasure speaking to you. Hope to see you next week again. Thanks a lot.
Thanks so much, Andrew. Wonderful to be here, as always.